All right, well, first off, welcome to the 2024 GrowSmart Maine Summit. We're really excited about this event. We're excited about this space. We're excited about talking about GrowSmart and about smart growth for a little while. First off, I want to acknowledge that wherever we are in Maine, we recognize the land is home to the Wabanaki Confederacy, which includes the Abenaki, the Maliseet, the Mi'kmaq, Passamaquoddy, and Penobscot peoples. Okay. I want to thank our sponsors. This would not be possible without our sponsors. I know some of you have had a chance to hear about them, and I know that's not entirely why we're here, but this would not be possible without them, so we want to make sure that we acknowledge them. Our leading sponsor, Kennebec Savings Bank. Our investing sponsors, AARP, Central Maine Power, the Nature Conservancy of Maine, the Betterment Fund. Our partnering sponsors, Machias Savings Bank, Bingham Program, Acorn Engineering, SMRT, Yard South, Down East Magazine, and Maine Biz. Thank you very much, and thanks to everybody who's a member and has taken the time to come here and talk about these important issues for the future of our great state. So thanks to everybody. I also want to thank the staff of GrowSmart Maine. This work would not be possible without the staff of GrowSmart Maine. As the chair of the board, I get to get up here and talk, but I know weeks and weeks of work have gone into this. So if the staff are in the room, could you stand up for a second? Or maybe they're busy herding people in. Yes, so Nancy's here, but so thank you very much, and I know how much work these things are, so it's much appreciated. We've got a really exciting day planned today. We have national, statewide, and local perspectives on smart growth and how it builds community, social community, which is something that I spend a lot of time talking about, as well as the physical community that we tend to sort of have an easier time getting our head around. But it's all about getting great places to live, and once we get past those basic things like I need a place to live that's safe, I need a job to pay for the place to live, what's next? And how do we build a great quality of life, and how do we build happiness and contentment among people? And that's something that hopefully we can all aspire to. I also want to welcome the elected officials that are here. I'm not going to take the time to name all of them, but thank you so much. Your work is much appreciated. It's really hard to be an elected official. It's harder than it's ever been. So thank you so much for continuing to go to the State House or whatever place you go as an elected official and do your work. It's really hard work. And I'd also like to welcome the appointed officials, the city managers, the town planners, all the people who do the administrative work. I know I did that for 25 years. That is also very difficult work, and I'm really glad you're taking the time to come here and offer us your wisdom. We have Wi-Fi. If we get boring, you can surf the internet here. And the info should be in the back of the program, so I wanted to make sure you knew that. You've probably all found it already, so thanks for that. That's not the slide I expected.
We didn't script this Kennebec Savings Bank.
Well, we're just going to go with this for a second.
This is what our team genuinely thinks about banking with us.
This isn't the interview. I haven't started yet. I like the people I work with. It's like a family, yeah. And I'm not just saying that.
We've been there for like 150 years, so everyone knows us. Your neighbor banks there.
We've got like this really deep heritage in the community. It's cool to be able to like actually feel aligned with what the bank is doing, and it's things that we can feel proud about.
We give back 10% of our earnings, and that's a lot of money back into the community.
The best part about our bank is that when you talk to someone, you're talking to me. You're talking to a real person.
I want you to feel like you're getting the most out of your money. And I don't want you to have to pay a fee if you don't have to.
Are you filming? No, we should have been.
Kennebec Savings Bank, because your life isn't scripted.
Call or visit Kennebec Savings Bank today and experience the difference.
You're not recording this, are you?
There we go. Thanks again to Kennebec Savings Bank. There's a bunch of videos. ARP of Maine. Okay. So here we are. We're going to talk about we get what we plan for, how smart growth creates community. Many of you have seen the land use maps that are out in the lobby of the Art Center. If you have a moment, go check them out. We're all about data in planning and smart growth, and there's some really interesting data there, and we ask you to add your own data to it by showing us the communities that you associate with. This is all designed to help spark the types of conversations we're hoping to get here across different people who maybe don't run into each other all the time, and get some curiosity going about parts of Maine that you don't know about, and things that cross sort of your traditional subject boundaries. If you're used to one area, go to a map that has something you don't know that much about. That's what we're all about, is getting that knowledge and realizing how it all fits together. And thanks to lots of people who have participated in those maps. I love that kind of data. People, in my work when I teach at MIT, I mention Maine and everybody's eyes light up. It's like this amazing place to people, and it is an amazing place. And we're so lucky to be here, and let's work to make it better and better because it doesn't happen by itself, and it happens through a lot of work. Is this a video? All right, let's go.
Hello, this is Molly and Bryant, former Penobscot Nation Tribal Ambassador and current incoming Executive Director of the Wabanaki Alliance. And it is my absolute pleasure and honor to be with you again virtually to welcome you to the GrowSmart Maine Annual Summit. A lot of the values and missions of your organization and your gathering align so well with the work that the tribes and the Wabanaki Confederacy have done historically and continue to do. The Penobscot Nation, where I am from, has a lot of great community building, sustainable projects underway. So a lot of the work you all are doing and discussing and coming together around really fits in with what we are doing as well. And a lot of the work of the Wabanaki Alliance has been about breaking down barriers, nurturing understanding and education between all of our neighbors, friends, and allies throughout our homelands now called Maine. So the more we can connect around what unites us and figure out ways to build bridges around what we may not understand or agree on about each other, the better. And that is really true for all people across the state. So super thankful to share space with you again. I see this as a way to center us in Wabanaki homelands, even if I'm not there presently. I truly appreciate and acknowledge each and every one of you, and so much gratitude for all the work you're doing and for allowing me to have a small part of it. And I want to thank you to Nancy Smith for your continued volunteering and just great strength and talent and insight and knowledge that you bring to our Wabanaki Alliance Coalition. That is one of the most successful grassroots movements I have ever seen, and I know that we've accomplished so much together on tribal sovereignty in Maine, and we will continue to do so in the future. So best of luck on your event this weekend, and please let's stay in this relationship, in this connectedness that we have built, and Kichiuliwini. Thank you very much.
Thanks to the Wabanaki Alliance. We have a new graphic that tries to explain to people who maybe aren't familiar with smart growth what we do. And it really is about these three items: being safe, thriving, and belonging. And I'd encourage you to look at this in more detail. Staff worked on this, and it really helps sort of capture smart growth in one message. So I'm not expecting you to memorize it right now, but it's on our website, and I think it really helps summarize what drives us in supporting communities. We talked about the maps. Thank you again. Now, I want to invite Nancy Smith up. She's the CEO of GrowSmart Maine. And Rhiannon Hampton, you are right there. I am right here. Come on up. I can always find the gingers in the crowd.
All right, are you guys, you're going to stand there while I... Get all this organized while I say nice things. Good morning, Maine and Waterville, and thank you so much to everybody for driving far and short distances to get here. My name is Rhiannon Hampson, and I have the distinct honor to serve the Biden-Harris administration as the State Director of USDA Rural Development here in Maine. Beyond that, I have the proud privilege of representing the people of Maine to the administration. And they hear from me frequently and often. So I don't know if they like that or not. But the undersecretary's here, so you can let him know how you feel about it. So the theme of today, of course, is you get what you plan for, right? You get what you plan for. And I think it also matters who you plan with. GrowSmart Maine, as some of you may or may not know, is actually my contracted state rural development council. And what that means is that in 1990, some people had good ideas, not me, if you see my bangs from 1990. But President Bush had some really good ideas about how to have rural spaces represented at the federal level. And created the state rural development councils. There are about 14 states who still have state rural development councils. That's because it is a lot of guts and no glory, which means it comes with some parameters and some expectations, but no funding. However, if you were here last year, you know that we did a big check moment. We're going to do one again, too, when I get to the end of this story. But we did a big check moment last year because GrowSmart called me when I first got appointed and said, how can we work together? What are we going to do? Nancy was like, let's get coffee and sort this out. And we made a plan. And the board and the team at GrowSmart took a pretty bold step and decided to go ahead and plan even before they knew whether or not I was going to be able to come through. And they created the Building Community Strengths Program. So raise your hand if you're from a community that is part of the Building Community Strengths Program. I know we have some. There we go. Yeah? There are 10 in all. There are 10 communities in all. Nice. And so although their deliverables are not due for another couple of years, on Friday, late breaking news, because that's how the government likes to do stuff, on Friday, we actually had a pretty exciting moment happen. So before I get to today's big check moment, I just really want to highlight what it means. So a lot of times when I read about federal spending, I like to think to myself, what have you done for me lately? What is it that we're actually talking about? We say historic investment, historic investment, historic investment. But what does that look like for us on the ground? When I'm catching chickens at 9 o'clock tonight, if anybody wants to come over, what does it look like for me that there have been historic investments happening in this state? Here's what it looks like. We know that climate change is coming for us at an increasing rate, right? In Maine, we have largely escaped earthquakes and hurricanes and tornadoes and floods and all of these things. And in the last couple of years, unfortunately, it has found us here too. Many of our down east communities all along the coast, actually up and down the coast, the 5,000 miles of coastline that we have, the offshore unbridged islands that we have, experienced really significant damage in the last couple of years, as did our western mountains, a place that you don't necessarily think about when you think about flooding. Fast forward to, I think, December of last year, things have gone pretty quickly, and the town of Mexico sustained significant damage, not only to their community infrastructure, their vital infrastructure. I want to recognize that they also lost neighbors. So this is something that it is now grounded in really real stuff, right? This is actually happening to us now. Our undersecretary, who is sitting here very casually, looking official, went to work, right? He heard all of us, all of the state directors. There was a hue and a cry, and he knew that it was really important right now for the state of Maine and for Tennessee and for Georgia and North Carolina and Arizona. We were all getting together and we were demanding that something be done. Our community facilities program had a disaster component that was able to be stood up. The national office team in our administrator's office, the undersecretary in his office, paid attention to the things that we needed, and they went forward and they created a community facilities disaster program. Kind of rapidly. I mean, I don't know if anyone has worked with us before. There is a phrase out there, it's like, it moves at the pace of the federal government, and they don't mean fast. And we are not an emergency response agency, rural development, right? We build rural communities. We like to say we build them from the ground up, and we do that slowly and thoughtfully. But Mexico needed something a lot faster. And so that grant announcement came out. The application window was fairly immediate.
Yes, it was.
And we did 3 things. My comms team, who is also here today, immediately started pushing out releases and calling people and telling people. My community facilities program staff started calling people that they knew, that they had heard from. And then I called Harold. We called Harold at GrowSmart Maine. And we said, hey, State Rural Development Council, Building Community Strength Partner, we know that you've been working with 10 very rural communities, and some of them have brought these challenges to you based on the storm. So fast forward through all of that, and we found out on Friday afternoon that although it was subscribed more than 2 times over, there are 14 or 15 projects, I'm looking to leave, that were selected nationally for the Community Facilities Disaster Program, and the town of Mexico is one of them. And the only way that that happened is that this partnership stepped in to actually make that work. We literally could not have done this by ourselves as a federal agency. The town of Mexico could not have done this by themselves, especially as the entity in need. And GrowSmart stepped in to be that partner, to be that connector, which is exactly what we're doing here. We're doubling down on those relationships. Thank you. So, yeah, let's give him a round of applause for GrowSmart. Harold, where are you? Good job. Dia, where are you? So fast forward now, and we realize, right, and moving through all of this kind of craziness, that when they say it's going to rain about 2 inches overnight, we now know that that might mean it's going to rain 5 inches in 2 hours. That might mean that the road to Machiasport, back and forth, my mom's here in the back, she's been cut off from town a couple of times because the road has washed out. There's one road in and one road out to a lot of our small communities. And how do we think forward about what we're going to do? How do we make sure that somebody's mom isn't sitting at home going, that's fine, I'll just light the wood stove and listen to some Neil Young? When they're like stranded, you know, when there's one road in and one road out, we plan for the future. We plan through resilience, that lens. We work with our incredible state administration who has stood up. I mean, the Maine won't wait component of what is happening now, and the information that we're getting from the work of the Climate Council has been phenomenal. Talk about partnership. And they've also stepped forward with funding for partnership. So GrowSmart comes back to us, and they're not even done yet. Like, they've already done all these amazing things in 1 year, you guys, with the money we gave them. And they came back to us and they said, the town of Holton wants to partner with us to actually plan for resilience. What does it look like to create some forward-thinking plan to make sure that our fire station isn't going to wash away, to make sure that our school is safe, to make sure that we have warming centers and all of the kind of work that we know we need to do now. And GrowSmart came to us, and my team, who's here, Beth was actually brand new to the team. This is one of the first things she did, was to help prepare a national grant, which is, again, not a small thing. So I think there were about 14 of these that were able to be made as well. And unfortunately, our funding was a little bit diminished, so we weren't able to give them as much money as we wanted to. And instead of just being like, well, that's fine, we don't want to do it anyway, they were like, that's great. We are totally going to roll with this and be very flexible. So it is my distinct honor to present GrowSmart Maine today with a modicum amount of funding to continue that work forward, to gratefully thank the town of Mexico for partnering with us, to thank the town of Holton for stepping forward and deciding to do this work and to allow us to be a part of that work through this award making. So the GrowSmart Maine organization is receiving $43,786 to partner with the town of Holton to engage in resilience planning, to build on that building community strength program that they're already doing, and to help make Maine, especially the furthest reaching parts of Maine, safe and wonderful places to live. Thank you so much. And that's my hard part, so I'm going to turn it over to everybody else now.
Back to you.
go too far, Nancy. Okay, that is awesome news. Thank you so much. It's all about partnerships. I want to introduce the moderator to the next portion of our event. This is a wonderful introduction, Kate Koff. She's the editor of the Maine Monitor. She previously worked as an editor for the Monitor, covering energy and the environment, and writing the weekly Climate Monitor newsletter, so all very timely. Previously, she was a beat reporter at the Ellsworth American. Nancy's familiar with Ellsworth, and a digital media strategist for the Ellsworth American and Mount Desert Islander. Kate graduated with honors from Columbia University School of Journalism and from Bryn Mawr College, magna cum laude. And she is an 8th-generation Mainer who lives on Mount Desert Island with her husband, daughter, and dogs. So that's awesome. We're really excited to have her here. And with that, come on up.
Thank you all so much for being here. I'm honored to be the moderator. That is a very giant picture of my face. Nobody told me about that. So I'm going to do a brief introduction of our wonderful speakers today, and then they are going to give a couple of presentations. After that, we'll have a little bit of a back and forth, and then we will open it up to the audience for questions. Actually, why don't we have you come up here? Dr. Gooden and Hannah, you want to come up to the stage so people can see you while I...
I will. I'll follow instructions.
We didn't rehearse, so Dr. Basil Gooden serves as Undersecretary for Rural Development. Born and raised in rural Virginia, where he and his family still own and operate a cattle farm, Dr. Gooden previously served as Director of State Operations for Rural Development, leading and supporting USDA's team of 47 Rural Development State Directors. Dr. Gooden also served as Rural Development State Director of Virginia under the Obama administration, and previously held roles as the Chief Deputy Director of the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development, as a Cooperative Extension Specialist at Virginia Tech, and as a Farm Service Agency County Committee member. Hannah Pingree was appointed as Director of Governor Mills' Office of Policy Innovation and the Future in 2019. Raised on the island of North Haven, Hannah was also appointed by Governor Mills in 2019 to co-chair the Maine Climate Council, which leads climate planning for the state. Hannah served 4 terms in the Maine legislature from 2003 to 2010 and served as both Speaker of the House of Representatives and House Majority Leader. And Dr. Gooden, I am going to turn it over to you to bring us into the next portion.
Okay, sounds great, sounds great. Good morning, everyone. I am just delighted to be here in Maine, and I am excited to tell you a little bit about what we do in USDA rural development and a little bit about partnerships and collaborations. But first, I do want to, thank you so much for the kind introduction, Kate, absolutely. And Hannah, thank you so much for sharing the stage here and the tremendous work that you do here in Maine. I've spoken to about 5, 10, 15 people this morning, came in for the reception, and each person without fail told me what a tremendous job Rhiannon Hampson is doing as our state director here. Now, I don't know if she's paid everybody in this thing, but apparently she's doing an outstanding job. I see that in Washington, D.C. Actually, I've known Rhiannon, about 4 or 5 years now. And I mean, from first meeting her, she's just a lightning bolt and really is dedicated to making change. So thank you for the tremendous leadership that you do here in Maine, but also want to thank the USDA Rural Development staff, her team, tremendous individuals. So thank you so much for the tremendous work. USDA Rural Development, we have a broad array of community and economic development tools. We currently have a portfolio of about 74 programs. We have in that portfolio about $243 billion loans and grants that we provide across the country, specifically in rural America. So we can do a lot in USDA rural development, but what we do know is that we can't do anything without partnerships and collaboration on the ground. I want to tell a quick story. As indicated, I'm a beef cattle farmer from Virginia, and we raise Black Angus beef cattle, just a small, we have less than 100 head of cattle. And July 25th, 2019, I received a phone call. It was about 11:30 at night. I received a phone call from the county sheriff. Now, I live in Richmond, Virginia. My farm is about an hour away. I received a phone call from the county sheriff saying, hey, Basil, there was an accident, automobile accident in front of your farm. The driver's okay, but he ran through the major pasture of your farm, and there's big holes in your fence line. And please get here as quickly as possible before we have a road full of cattle here in Buckingham County, Virginia. And so what normally takes me about an hour to get from Richmond to my farm, it took me maybe about 40 minutes that night because, I jumped out of bed and just hightailed it to the farm. Well, by the time I got to the farm, there were so many people there. There was a yard full of folks. Some of these folks I knew, some of these folks I didn't know. There were about 30 or so people in my yard and along the fence line. But surprising to me, the people that were there had already patched the fence line. They had already fixed the fence. They'd found material, they found fencing, and they had fixed it. And so when I drove up, when I saw what had happened, it really spoke to me that this is truly the spirit of rural America, that you had people that I didn't know, both black people, white people, Republicans, Democrats. They had come together because they saw someone in need, and they just responded. And so they fixed the fence line. But what that also shows is the need for collaboration and partnership, because people come together when there is something to do, when we can move rural America forward. That story resonates with me because, again, it not only speaks to the spirit of rural America and collaboration, but it tells us what can be done when we are facing challenging times, when we are hit by disasters. Rhiannon talked a little bit about, again, the Disaster Assistance Fund, the relief that was provided. I was in Southwest Virginia 2 weeks ago looking at some of the devastation from Hurricane Helene. We're working with the state director in Florida related to the devastation also from Hurricane Milton. So what I do know and what I believe in is the spirit of rural America to come together to really make a difference in the work that we do. Now, I'm just excited because what we do in rural development, we bring resources. We have a lot of resources. We have a lot of programs. But what I also know in USDA rural development is that a lot of our 74 programs do not align nicely with the needs that you see on the ground. You all are doing the work. GrowSmart Maine is doing the work on the ground with the communities, whether it's providing technical assistance or just helping. But what we know is we need to be more agile, flexible at the federal level. That's why I'm just happy to have state directors like Rhiannon and really people who can think innovatively and creatively. Because what we're trying to do in rural development, I'm working with the administrators, whether it's the rural housing administrator, the rural utilities administrator, or the rural cooperative business administrator. All of these individuals work in rural development What we're really encouraging people to do is to be innovative, creative, and flexible in their programs, knowing that, again, a lot of our programs just do not align nicely with the needs on the ground. And in order to make our programs more accessible for communities to utilize our programs, to create these partnerships, we're going to have to be creative, flexible with our programs. And that's what we're encouraging people, not only at the national level at rural development, but also in each and every state and in the communities that we serve. So I'm just delighted that we're trying to be innovative, creative, flexible, because that's the only way that we can better serve the communities that we're here to serve. I got the opportunity to talk this morning with some of our award recipients. I spoke with Drew at the ecology school, and really that was a project that rural development invested $8.6 million in. So we're delighted about the tremendous work that's being done there. We also invested in the Fork Food Lab in Portland, Maine as well. Tremendous opportunity there. And then in the town of Holton, actually, we were able to invest about $13 million there for water infrastructure to really serve about 19,000 people. But here's the thing. We can talk about the number of investments that we made. We can talk about the dollar amount of investments that we've made. What we want to be measured on in rural development is not the dollar amount and not the number of projects, but we want to be measured on the impact that we're making in these communities. Just like you see the impact day in and day out of your work. You see how you move the needles for families, for communities, for individuals. Whether it's through housing, we have a broad portfolio of housing programs. We invest in healthcare, medical centers, distance learning, telemedicine, and we also invest in high-speed internet. Tremendous opportunities to really improve the rural livability of many communities across Maine and rural America. But the thing that we want to really be measured on is the impact, the difference we make in the lives of these individuals. Very quickly, I'll tell you, in June, I was in Pennsylvania, Chester, Pennsylvania in June. And we were celebrating Home Ownership Month. And we were collaborating with Habitat for Humanity. And that day, there were 3 families that were moving into a new home there in Chester, very rural area, Chester, Pennsylvania. And one of the families actually had 3 kids with them. And there was a 7-year-old girl who was moving into one of the new homes there. And a person from Habitat for Humanity, as this young girl, very excited, going into her new home, the person from Habitat for Humanity asked the young girl, said, "Aren't you excited to finally have your own room?" And the little girl, 7-year-old girl, without any hesitation said, "I'm excited to finally have my own bed." So she's a 7-year-old, never had her own bed. She slept on couches and mattresses and floors and things of that nature. But you can just imagine, if a person is not adequately housed, I hear about housing issues as I go across the United States. You can pretty much assume that there are other, she's not adequately nourished or fed. Perhaps not adequately supported, whether it's educationally as well. We know that housing makes a tremendous difference in the lives of individuals. It improves the health outcomes for individuals, the educational outcomes for individuals. So again, housing is more than just shelter, and that's what we believe at USDA Rural Development. But going back about the impact that we make, don't ever forget or underestimate the impact that you make when you collaborate, when you partner, when you work, when we do this work together. We continue to move the needles for individuals, whether it's 7-year-olds or families or communities. This work requires collaboration, and we're excited to be a part of the collaboration and the work that you do here in Maine. So I'm honored to be here this morning to really share in some ideas, to really let you know that we're trying to be as innovative, as creative, as flexible with our programs across rural development. We continue to support Rhiannon and her team because they are very creative, very flexible. We're flexible within the parameters of the statute and the law. So I wanted to make sure that we clarify that. But really, that's the only way we can get things done. Really, is to be flexible. So again, we're honored to really share the stage, to talk a little bit about what we're going to do. And really, I just wanted to share a little bit about the philosophy, really, that we're utilizing here at USDA Rural Development. That's the only way that we're going to continue to make the biggest impact that we can in rural America. And so we're delighted to be a partner with you, GrowSmart Maine. And so thank you so much for the tremendous work that you do. And please count on USDA Rural Development to continue to be a partner and a collaborator with you as you continue to move the needle in your community. Again, thanks for having me. I look forward to having a conversation this morning as well. Thank you.
Oh my God, my face, so big. Great, much better. Well, welcome. Great to see such an excellent audience, many familiar faces who I have the honor of working with. Often some folks who I've served with in office, so again, thank you for being here this morning. I love the title and the theme of this event. We get what we plan for, how smart growth creates community. On so many important issues relevant to our state, our economy, and our quality of life, the need for thoughtful planning and making those plans a reality at all levels is key, and that is why we are here this morning. It's wonderful to be here with State Director Hampson. She showed you why she's such a rock star. She has been an incredible partner to our office and the work of the state on so many different issues. And it's also a real honor to share the stage here with Undersecretary Gooden. We are so grateful for the work of rural development here in Maine and across the country, and your many years of service to build communities, businesses, homes, and invest in clean energy across rural America is inspiring. I also just want to give a big thank you to Nancy Smith and the GrowSmart Maine team. Nancy Smith and I served together for 8 years in the Maine legislature between 2002 and 2010. We were both children at the time, of course. But Nancy's passion for creating vibrant rural communities and downtowns, fostering economic opportunity, and balancing our farms and natural resources in that mix has been long-standing and dedicated. Nancy effectively managed a number of battles and policy issues when I served with her in Augusta, and many of those wins paved the way for positive outcomes we are still benefiting from today, from economic opportunity to more efficient homes. So huge thank you again to Nancy for inviting me here today and for your awesome staff for pulling off this day. So Kate mentioned my office, and I think many of you have worked with us, but just a quick overview of where I'm coming from. I do have one of the coolest jobs in state government, leading the Governor's Office of Policy, Innovation, and the Future. My boss, Governor Janet Mills, created this office in 2019, following the advice of writer Kurt Vonnegut, that every government ought to have a Department of the Future. We gave it an acronym, GoPIF, but we bring together government agencies at all levels, communities, regional groups, and other partners, ensuring that progress does not get stuck in silos, whether that be through the Children's Cabinet or the Cabinet on Aging, cross-agency work on opioid recovery, housing and homelessness, the state's workforce challenges. We also help to coordinate the state's approach to federal funding, like the bipartisan infrastructure law and other economic investments. The largest part of our team focuses on the challenges and solutions related to climate change, ranging from efforts to reduce emissions so that we can play our part in a global challenge to how we can increase the resilience of communities and our economy. We are here today to talk about the impacts of planning, how we can create the kinds of communities, economy, and state that will be vibrant in a changing future. Our office thinks that plans are really important. We strive to create plans that are actionable, that engage Maine people, And we do then all we can to spur that action so that there is real progress on the ground. I'm going to speak mostly today about the work my office does on climate change issues and planning. That is among our most significant policy projects. In my view, climate is the most existential and important threat that our state is managing. The solutions initiatives that are coming out of Maine's climate process have so many positive impacts for our communities. Strengthened infrastructure, more efficient homes, walkable downtowns, protected farmlands and local food, new jobs and economic opportunities. These are all things that I know GrowSmart Maine and this audience understand deeply. So just a few themes that I'm going to talk about today, and they're probably a given for everyone in this room. But to kick it off, I'll state the obvious. Creating community is important, and it takes work. We are living in complicated times. Maine's communities are seeing growth and rapid changes, including many related to a changing climate. The pace of change is accelerating. This requires more thoughtful and deliberate approaches to planning. Thoughtful planning with community engagement can help solve complex problems and provide better solutions, but compromise and trade-offs will be required. And lastly, the state of Maine is stepping up to do this work. Okay, another lastly. Even more important, strong community leaders are needed. These leaders need more backup, and our future and creating vibrant, resilient communities will depend on it. So just for the first theme, creating community is important and it takes work. Kate mentioned that I live on the offshore island of North Haven, and I want to just tell you a little about where I'm coming from, in addition to my job and office in Augusta. I live on a small island community of just 417 people, many of those who make their living as lobstermen and contractors, and a few more remote workers than we had 5 years ago. I've learned about the importance of both planning and hard work to build community, to make livable and vibrant towns, and that it constantly takes work. This slide includes 3 projects that I worked on while I was in the state legislature: our community school, our elder care facility, and our downtown community center. Every one of those projects has been crucial for the future of our island community. I've also learned huge lessons about the importance of housing in my town. Housing is key for a vibrant community. I know everyone in this room knows that. And on an island, you cannot commute to island jobs. With incredible pressure to gentrify, like so many towns, our community is facing rapid changes, and the housing is among the most significant. Lastly, I will just say among the most significant changes is the storms. We've heard a little bit about them today. I know everybody in this room knows a fair amount about them, but this is what my community looked like on January 11th. This is our downtown boatyard. You might have heard about it in the Portland Press Herald. It was absolutely flooded. The gas pump was flooded. It didn't work for days. Debris was everywhere. And one of our towns, the real center of our community, where you get gossip around the wood barrel stove, was nearly washed away. So we're living in complicated times. Again, you all know this, and the pace of change is accelerating. So again, a couple of statistics that you all probably know well about where our state is. Our population is still the oldest in the country. We are the oldest state by median age. That obviously, I think, for everybody in this room creates challenges. It creates challenges for our workforce, for our communities, especially for our rural communities. Maine has seen some recent growth in population due to both domestic and international migration. So you probably can't see every little word on this, but the red is the deaths in Maine, the blue is the births. For the last 20 years, Maine had more deaths than births, and due to the purple, which is domestic migration, and the green, which is international migration, we are now seeing an increase in the state's population. This was just in the years 2021 and 2022. But we know that these changes, what happened to Maine in the pandemic, increasing pressure from people buying summer homes, but more in migration, has meant we have a housing crisis in the state of Maine. Our office worked with Maine Housing, Department of Economic and Community Development, to put out a report just last year about the current need, unmet need for housing in our state. Maine needs 38,500 homes just to meet the current workforce requirements of our population. Going forward, we need to add another 38 to 46,000 additional homes by 2030. You've probably heard a lot about this number of we need at least 80,000 homes to meet our state's population and our workforce needs. So again, we are living in a time of change. We are living in a time where we need more housing and more people in our state to meet our demographic challenges. And again, this is a challenge that every community leader is facing on the ground. The other challenge that we all know, and we've talked about it this morning, is that Maine is already seeing increasing impacts from climate change. We are seeing warming temperatures, more precipitation, shorter winters, and rising sea levels. I know many of you probably have seen these pictures. You know them well. The storms from December 18th, January 10th, 11th, and 13th really were a wake-up call for people across our state. Significant damages on the working waterfront. This is a picture from Stonington, Maine that saw damage to numerous wharves. You could see this up and down our coast from the very far reaches of down East Maine all the way to Kittery. Extreme riverine flooding. We talked about the floods in western Maine, what they meant for Rumford and Mexico. This is a picture of downtown Hallowell, and I think people know the kinds of damage this meant for the community, for businesses, and for the sort of change that this meant for the town of Hallowell. Significant roadway damages. This is Newry, Maine, Route 26. This was just one of the many crumbled roads that miraculously local road departments and Maine DOT were able to put back together in just a couple of weeks. But this is the kind of damage we are seeing in our state on a regular basis. Also, huge impacts to major employers and property. This is the spinning mill in Skowhegan, an exciting economic development project that saw tremendous damage with the December storms. So I would just say, right now the state is currently managing 8 open federal disasters. That is the most we have ever faced in our state's history. I was very proud that in the face of such shocking damage last winter, the state advanced an unprecedented package to support recovering and rebuilding, with a major theme of resilience. Governor Mills proposed emergency funding, and the legislature approved it for working waterfront, for infrastructure recovery, and adaptation efforts. The governor recognized that FEMA funds would not cover private but essential working waterfronts and other businesses, and in many cases, FEMA would not cover many of the community's efforts to build back better. So today, nearly $60 million has been committed across our state. All these little dots on the map are projects that folks on the ground in communities are advancing. We also know that more needs to be done for the storms ahead. The 3-storm punch of last winter convinced the governor that we needed to ensure the state's recovery was successful. We needed more minds to advance a thoughtful plan for the future. We were inspired by a commission in Texas that was convened after Hurricane Harvey. Texas doesn't like to talk about climate change, but the plan talked about future-proofing Texas. They produced a plan to help Texas do just that, and Governor Mills signed an executive order last May to launch a similar commission, the Infrastructure Rebuilding and Resilience Commission, with several goals to accelerate our work to prepare our state for the storms ahead and the disasters of the future. The commission is required to submit its first recommendations November 15th, ahead of the next legislative session. So on the same theme, I want to talk to you about the state's climate plan, Maine Won't Wait, one of the most significant planning efforts our state undertakes. Our governor made climate planning and climate action a priority of her administration when she took office in 2019, and she has worked since then, tasking our office with enacting a law and then implementing the state's climate action plan, Maine Won't Wait. I think it's helpful to remind people that Maine's climate law passed in 2019. It was sponsored by Republican State Senator David Woodsum. It passed overwhelmingly with bipartisan support in the Maine House and Senate. And I think that's good news, because right now I think we think about climate change, we think about climate action, and it sometimes seems partisan. But in Maine, there has been overwhelming support for taking action. So the climate plan has a couple of goals. We have emissions reduction goals to reduce our emissions 45% by 2030 and at least 80% by 2050, to be carbon neutral as a state by 2045, and to do all we can to ensure that Maine people, industries, and communities are resilient to the impacts of climate change. To do all that, we have to produce a new plan every 4 years. The first plan came out December 1 of 2020 in the middle of the pandemic. And since then, we've seen incredible action across the state. Another plan is due in just a couple of months on December 1st of this year. Again, so we have 4 big goals: to reduce our emissions, to make our state more resilient to the impacts of climate change. We believe we can foster economic opportunity and prosperity through climate action. And lastly, to advance equity through Maine's climate response. I think probably lots of folks in this room have seen this slide before. What does it mean to reduce our emissions? We know that nearly half of our state's emissions come from transportation, a little over 30% from our buildings, our homes, and our businesses, 10% from industry, and then just 9% from electric power. Right now, we are about 30% of the way there. We've reduced our emissions 30% since 1990, so we're just 15% away from where we need to be in 2030. But we know we have a lot of heavy lifting to make this a reality. We also know we have incredibly heavy lifting when it comes to resilience. So right now, the Maine Climate Council has spent the last year and a half working on strategies, and I wanted to talk to you about them today because so many of them overlap with the goals of smart growth in Maine. We have 6 different working groups, hundreds of people who've been working on this plan who make up the Maine Climate Council, including science and technical subcommittee leaders, an equity subcommittee, and then different specific working groups. We also have spent a lot of the last year and a half going out and hearing from Maine people. Thousands of Maine people, both youth engaged in climate action, local community leaders, folks who are less likely to be asked to be involved in the climate planning process. We have been working aggressively over the last year to make sure that as many Maine people's voices were heard as a part of this process. And again, we have to deliver a plan by the end of this year. So I'm going to talk just quickly about a couple of the strategies that I think really overlap with the work that GrowSmart Maine is doing in Maine communities. We have 7 different strategies proposed in this upcoming climate plan around transportation, our buildings, our energy sector, jobs in the economy, our environment, building resilient communities, and then how do we engage with Maine people. I'm not going to talk about them all, and I promise you I won't read all the words on the slides, but I actually want to get you excited for how aligned I think the state is through both our climate planning work and lots of our other plans with the work that's happening on the ground in communities across Maine. So first I'm going to talk about a few of the strategies that the Community Resilience Working Group came up with that are very much aligned with your work. 1, increase local capacity for climate action. We heard about it today, the work that GrowSmart Maine is doing in Holton, what they're doing in Mexico. So we know that communities need a lot more support for climate action. We have significant ideas and goals around how we enhance the state's ability to prepare for and recover from natural disasters. We have learned a tremendous amount in the last year about how we're ready and the many ways in which we're not ready. We know that for communities to get ready, we need to expand long-term access to funding and financing for climate adaptation strategies and emissions reductions. A lot of those actually will come through the work of rural development and so many of the programs that they offer, as well as state opportunities. We know we need to promote smart growth to reduce emissions, especially as our state grows, to prevent natural and working land conversion, and create affordable housing. This is literally a strategy just packaged up perfectly for Nancy Smith and all of you in this room. We need to build healthy and resilient coastal communities and protect critical place-based infrastructure. This is especially infrastructure like our working waterfront, but obviously could apply to so many of the community infrastructure needs of our downtowns. We need to provide technical assistance to communities and proactive communication to support effective land use planning. We know that these things sound easy on slides, and when the reality of confronting them in communities with ordinances and decisions, it becomes a lot harder. So for that reason, we need to use both incentives and regulations for land use policies that reduce emissions, foster vibrant community centers, reduce sprawl, and provide measurable benefits. So this is, how does the state actually provide carrots and sticks to help make this happen? I'm not going to talk about all the strategies around our buildings. You've probably heard ad nauseum about the state's work on heat pumps and efficiency and building codes. But just know that many of our measures, we do hope both reduce carbon and improve the resilience of our homes. This work is happening in municipal buildings across our state, in schools, and in homes. We also know that we need to build more housing that is affordable, energy efficient, and close to vibrant community centers. There is a blank on this slide about how we are going to set a bold goal to renovate and build clean and energy efficient, affordable housing units each year. We're going to make the decision on that in our Climate Council meeting this upcoming Wednesday. But again, we are trying to be incredibly bold about how the climate plan, federal dollars that are coming in, can leverage real action on the ground to benefit Maine people. Protecting Maine's environment and working lands and waters is a crucial part of our climate plan. Two big goals: to increase the acreage of conserved natural lands and working waters to 30% by 2030. We're at about 22% now. Simultaneously and overlapping, increase the amount of food consumed in Maine from state food producers to 30% by 2030. A bold goal, but we know that will help us preserve farmland and feed Maine people and reduce the amount of food that we are importing into Maine from around the country and around the world. Lots of talk. Obviously, our entire climate plan is very much about clean energy and ensuring our homes and our transportation systems are driven by clean energy. So two parts of that goal are to both decrease energy burdens while transitioning to clean energy. We need to make sure that it is affordable for Maine people. And then plan and build the infrastructure needed to achieve 100% clean energy by 2040. And that's where smart growth and land use planning is going to come in a big, big way, because we know we need to be smart about where we locate clean energy and how we manage clean energy clean energy and its transmission with lots of other competing needs. Transportation, again, half of our state's emissions. We have significant goals around electrifying our transportation systems, both our cars and our medium and heavy duty vehicles. But we know that a major part of the work is to figure out how we can reduce vehicle miles traveled by investing in public, active, and shared transportation and smart land use policies. People in Maine drive a long, long way to get to work, to go home. We don't have a lot of public transportation in our rural areas, and so advancing strategies that both help people better get to work and school and reduce our emissions coming from transportation is key. So that's our climate plan. And I will just say that the state likes to put out plans, but we want to make sure that we are partners in helping to actually make those plans a reality. We also know that our plans are not easily implemented, and so the state of Maine is stepping up in a variety of ways to support this work. So this is a slide that our Climate Council used at a couple of meetings about land use and climate goal intersections. So I just want to state the obvious, that all of the things that we are trying to do, they do run into each other. How do we meet housing needs and future growth? Reduce our transportation emissions, manage for climate resilience. There are areas that are flooding we should not be building anymore. How do we site clean energy infrastructure and transmission lines and meet our targets? And simultaneously protect natural and working lands for local food production and carbon sequestration. This doesn't happen easily. It happens with both state policy, but lots of regional and local planning to think about where do we want things, what trade-offs are required, and how can state government, regional governments, and local governments work together to sort out what are often impossible conversations. I will just say the state has stepped up with a couple of different programs and funding sources to help communities do this work. Coming out of our first climate plan in 2020, we launched the Community Resilience Partnership Program, a grant program to help communities invest in reducing emissions, transitioning to clean energy, and becoming more resilient. Since 2021, we have distributed over $9 million. We have 226 communities participating We have this map on our website, maine.gov/future. Please make sure that your community is participating. This is an incredibly low barrier program where we want every community in Maine to join, because right now we actually have $8 million open and available for grants to communities. That is by far our largest grant round ever. So the deadline for applying for those funds is December 17th. We are also seeking service providers. GrowSmart Maine has been one of them to help communities participate in this program. And we also use this program to help push out other federal funds. Right now, the Federal Department of Energy is working with us to help communities increase energy efficiency in public buildings. So 3 different opportunities open. Make sure your town is participating. Lots more, again, can be found at our website. All of this and a lot of this work around planning and action and implementation, obviously the Undersecretary spoke to this. We are in a time of tremendous opportunities around federal funding. Starting with the American Rescue Plan Act, which brought $1 billion to Maine that we invested in Maine communities. Then the bipartisan infrastructure law, which has had significant benefits to investing in our infrastructure for resilience, transportation, broadband, lots of funds going out to communities, and now the Inflation Reduction Act, a real game changer when it comes to climate action and climate resilience. So Maine has used many of those funds. We actually blend those funds to create programs like the Infrastructure Adaptation Fund. Starting in 2022, we put $20 million out through those ARPA funds. We use state budget funds. We put the $60 million that came from the legislature largely through this fund. And now we also have an additional, we were just awarded this past summer, $69 million from NOAA to help enhance community resilience. Additional funding will be going out through the Community Resilience Partnership Program, the Infrastructure Adaptation Program, and a variety of other state programs. I don't expect you to remember all these acronyms, but what I do want you to know is that we are living in a time where if communities make a thoughtful plan, and then they figure out, they do the engineering about what will it take to make that plan actionable. We are living in a time where for the next 3 to 5 years, unprecedented federal funding will be available to help make those plans a reality. So if your community is not yet engaged, please make sure they're signed up for the Community Resilience Partnership Program. It is an easy $75,000 to do what your community thinks is important. So I want to just, the very last thing the state is doing that I am really excited about is this past year, the legislature endorsed the creation of the Maine Office of Community Affairs. I know lots of folks in this room are very familiar with the State Planning Office that used to be a one-stop shop to help with planning, to help with smart growth issues, to be a real partner with Maine communities. But that office went away in a prior administration, and now 6 years into the governor's time in the office, the legislature has now put back into the law a new idea, which is the Maine Office of Community Affairs. Again, we know that communities are facing incredibly complex housing, land use, climate resilience, and other challenges, and they need greater coordination and support from the state of Maine. So I know many of you have heard this news. If you were at MMA, I unveiled it there in a very similar presentation. But I am very excited that actually it is her first day on the job. Today is day 1. She should stand up. If you don't know who I'm talking about, it's former GrowSmart board member Samantha Horn, who is a longtime community planner, policymaker, natural resource expert, many years running the Maine's Land Use Planning Commission, and Samantha brings decades of deep experience with communities across Maine, especially rural Maine. She knows the challenges they face and the time and effort put into solutions. So Samantha, again, it's her first day on the job. Over the course of the next couple months through the Maine legislative session, we will be actually rebuilding the Maine Office of Community Affairs, bringing programs that were sent to varying agencies of state government back together, and we hope that office is really up and running and robust by July 1 of 2025. But Samantha is already ready to receive your phone calls and hear your ideas. Sorry, Samantha. So again, I just want to finish with this theme, and Samantha really exemplifies it, that strong community leaders are needed, and those leaders need more backup. And our future in creating vibrant, resilient communities depends on it. I want to acknowledge, actually, as Jeff did, that many of the issues we are working on and the difficult tasks of leadership, planning, and action are very hard, especially in these politicized times. Even without politics and NIMBYs and permitting processes, this work would be difficult. But adding in so many competing forces and facts and then misinformation can make progress really hard. And that is what makes local leaders all the more important. So I'm thrilled to close this morning by featuring a few of the municipal leaders, I would actually call them heroes, who are leading their communities with determination and action in these complex times. They are visionaries who care about planning and smart growth, economic opportunity, and resilience. In fact, I met many of these town leaders in our travels with the Governor's Resilience Commission over this past summer and fall. The first leader I want to highlight is Kendra Amaral, the town manager from Kittery. Kendra has been a leader in community planning, resilience, and so many proactive efforts during her time in Kittery. She took part in the Southern Maine collaborative process with fellow York County leaders to develop a local climate action plan, and she's now working across multiple sectors to implement that plan to increase resilience, including on Kittery's working waterfront, through housing and transportation access, infrastructure projects, and through innovative electricity grid improvements. Kendra told me that resilience has so many meanings in Kittery. She said resilience includes being a community that can adapt and thrive in the face of a changing climate, but it also means being a community that is home to the next generation of Mainers, with affordable housing options and public transit. Kendra says that what keeps her hopeful is including the resources that are being made available to make projects happen. She says, we are experiencing success and proving Kittery is a very capable, mid-sized community and worthy of the resources that typically only go to the cities for projects and programs. We have a great deal of confidence in our ability to implement our strategies, AKA the Kittery way. Our plans don't sit on shelves collecting dust. We are hopeful that there is a real desire to protect and preserve what makes our town and region a wonderful place, and that passion will propel us forward in the years to come. Kendra's point, that plans are good, but making those plans come to life with action is what really matters. The second leader I want to mention is Shiloh Lafreniere, the town manager of J Maine. Shiloh has been battle-tested by event after event, and she is led with intelligence and compassion. Her community's largest employer, the Pixel J Mill, was thrown into chaos in April of 2020, just a month after the pandemic hit. The mill's central digester exploded, soon resulting in the loss of the mill, several hundred jobs, and a huge hit to the tax base. Faced with economic calamity, Shiloh and her team worked day and night to support new options for the mill's future. Shiloh has also been on the front lines of managing extreme and targeted climate events. On June 29, 2023, a rainstorm lasting just a few hours dropped an estimated 6 inches of rain across Jay and parts of neighboring towns. The extreme storm resulted in substantial flooding that led to infrastructure damage across the whole town. Shiloh faced millions of dollars of damage, needing to become an overnight expert on FEMA reimbursement and the endless forms reporting and project management skills that she and her team would need to develop. And she did all that work to rebuild in a year and a half. And she also agreed to serve as the municipal representative to the Governor's Infrastructure Recovery and Resilience Commission. And I will just say that picture on the left is of a road in J Maine that we visited over this past summer. And Shiloh reported to me that it just got fixed. Shiloh was proud that her select board and community recognized shortly after the storms that they needed to rebuild Jay's destroyed infrastructure back better than it was before, even if FEMA wouldn't pay for it. She said by far the easiest and least costly process is to just replace what was damaged. However, our community recognized that that was short-sighted. The need to think long-term and plan for resilience and change, both climate changes and economic ones, is something we need to do across our state with urgency. I also want to highlight the dynamic team of Kathleen Billings and Linda Nelson from Stonington. Kathleen is the longtime town manager, Linda's the economic development director. Stonington is one of the most significant fishing ports in our state and an island connected to the mainland by a causeway and bridge. The causeway is often known as one of the most vulnerable portions of roadway in our state and is the subject of a major DOT resilience project. Kathleen and Linda have been tireless in their commitment to improving their community, and they've just demonstrated it again and again. I know they, like many of you, lay awake at night, worried about the future, with changes it will bring and scheming new ideas. From affordable housing crisis driven by gentrification and Wall Street speculators to a waterfront impacted by both changing fisheries and sea level rise, Stonington has had a lot to manage. And yet they've been dogged in going after every state and federal fund possible to invest in their community and infrastructure, to make their downtown more vibrant, and consider how Stonington can survive in a time of rapid and changing climate. Through their efforts, Stonington has secured significant funds to raise critical local roads vulnerable to high tides and sea level rise. They've used state and federal grants to get the work done, doing the impossible task of braiding funds that is usually so elusive. In a partnership with Deer Isle, Stonington also got a federal grant to install a ground-mounted solar array next to their business incubator center and Island Community Center. They've been designated a connectivity hub by the Maine Connectivity Authority. And they're also now pursuing a unique public-private partnership to secure vital pieces of their working waterfront with the Maine Community Foundation. When I asked Kathleen what keeps her hopeful, she said, "The January storms were the worst time of my life. The devastation was horrible. I was affected personally because it just kills your soul. So many people were shocked, and you have no answers. And I'm guessing just like the leaders in Western Maine. I have hope we can all work together to put Maine in a better place. Plus, I don't expect you to say this in public, but you and I have just enough piss and vinegar to forge ahead." That is leadership. Even today as I write this, I've had every friggin' thing that can go wrong, but tomorrow is another day. That is my medicine and hope. I'm not going to give up. Kathleen said it about as clearly as it can be said. Lastly, I want to highlight someone who is a believer, who I believe is in this room, Luke. Luke Dyer. Luke is a former police chief who, after many years of service, decided he could bring something to his broader community. And he was the police chief for many years, and he hasn't looked back. While I was visiting Aroostook County last month, he told me about the Van Buren Resilience Initiative that is bringing community vibrance and economic recovery to his town in every way they can. As part of the Resilience Initiative, the town is installing bike racks, walking trails, and signage to support other modes of transportation, planting native trees and plants to support green space, building a community greenhouse for local food production, and implementing green stormwater infrastructure to manage increased precipitation. This is all part of an overarching Complete Streets project in partnership with Maine DOT. One part of this effort is the Van Buren Community Garden Project, which is the reinvention and reuse of a 3.2-acre green space located in Van Buren's downtown village. The area, a former cul-de-sac neighborhood, was entirely lost in a flood in 2008. The community still feels the pain of those events and the families that lost their homes. Collaborating with members of a small grassroots organization, Luke proposed the creation of a community garden in that space that would include 2 large greenhouses, I think, that have started to arrive, and 10 raised beds to promote food sustainability and engage seniors to help curb loneliness. The project was funded through a Community Resilience Partnership grant, and the Town Council, with enthusiasm, approved the match funding to make this project a reality. Luke said that for Van Buren, resilience is the community's ability to adapt, rebuild, and thrive through creative revitalization, preserving our heritage while embracing modern solutions. Luke worries that Van Buren's ability to withstand future challenges like severe storms and economic disruptions may be hindered by outdated infrastructure and limited resources, making it crucial to invest in systems that protect Van Buren long-term. Leaders like Luke, Kathleen, Linda, Shiloh, Kendra, and Samantha are the ones who will do the heavy lifting, with so many more people in this room. They need support, they need backup, they need friends and allies. But I want to end with something you all know. Creating and planning for resilient communities is worth the effort. And again, I thank you all for the work that you do. It is incredibly important. So with that, thank you.
All right. That was excellent. Thank you, both of you. So we're actually going to do questioning a little bit differently than you may be used to. We're going to ask that you come up to this and line up at the central microphone to ask your questions. So I'm gonna start here, but if you do have a question, if you can come up to the microphone and make your way there, and we will get to those in a moment. Hannah, you talked about a couple of really interesting things, and you talked about, both fostering economic prosperity as well as sort of, thoughtful siting of renewable energy development. And we have seen in recent years sort of increased pushback from some communities about citing renewable energy development in their communities, in part because, I think they don't, they're unsure about whether there will be a financial benefit to those places and the ways in which it will change their place. Could you talk a little bit about a place where you've seen kind of a direct benefit from renewable energy development, and tell us what the structure of those benefits looked like?
Sure. Okay. Obviously, I think this is an issue playing out across Maine in many, many ways. I was just actually, as I mentioned, up in Aroostook County. And if you haven't been up, there are some large solar projects in Aroostook. And I would say some of them, people will say, I have no idea who's benefiting from all those solar panels. My electricity rates just went up. And for that reason, they're mad, they're concerned, they're worried they won't be able to afford their electricity bills. Up in Aroostook County, the town of Limestone has put a significant array on both the old base and on their wastewater treatment facilities. And in that case, the community said, we want to invest in that project. It is going to lower our energy bills. It is going to make our wastewater treatment plant more likely to operate. And the structure of that was actually investment through both state programs as well as through the federal government. So I would say some people don't want to look at solar panels, they don't want to look at wind turbines, they don't even want to hear about offshore wind. And they definitely don't want to look at transmission lines. But I think most people understand the reality that in a future where we don't want to spend $5 billion on fossil fuels and exporting that money out of state, and we want to use that money to create clean energy that's better for our health and creates good paying jobs in Maine, there are trade-offs. But people do need transparency about who's benefiting. And in some cases, some of those projects up in Aroostook County are benefiting farmers. They have a lot of land and they don't need it all, and they have decided to make a decision for their family to invest and allow their land to be developed for solar. So there are clearly battles playing out across the state, but I think transparency and understanding will go a long way. The state was awarded a large $60 million Solar for All grant where a variety of types of solar projects will be deployed across the state that must benefit communities and low-income people. So I think we see the opportunity for lots more investment that will benefit people on the ground, whether it's through community projects, through affordable housing developments. So I think that is a real opportunity to ensure that Maine people benefit. I'll just end with an example. I live on, again, as I told you, one of the offshore islands, and we are run by a consumer-owned utility called Fox Island Electric Co-op. And in 2008, we put 3 big 1.5 megawatt GE turbines on Vinyl Haven to power the community. Those turbines have produced more power than the islands use. Sometimes the power is comes at the wrong time for when we need it. We get a lot of power in the wintertime and not enough in the summertime. But people in our community benefit directly. They own that power. And we're seeing more and more models like that develop around the state. So I will just say there are no easy answers. We do need transmission lines, and we do need wind, and we need solar if we're going to meet our climate goals. But how we set it in a way and how we provide information and transparency and benefit to Maine people is going to be really crucial going forward.
And Dr. Gooden, you talked quite a bit about housing, and you told that really sad and beautiful story about the family, and how housing is really more than just shelter. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about, we've seen increased costs of development, and we've seen, real labor shortages across the United States and supply challenges that are facing rural communities. Can you talk about how rural development is adapting to the changing housing market to really ensure that we do have affordable homes in these rural areas?
Sure. Yeah. No, I appreciate that question. Certainly, housing is a challenge, not only for Maine, but most states across the country. And so what we're doing in rural development is really, again, trying to be as flexible with our programs. One of the things that we're doing, we're working with philanthropies to really try to provide gap funding in housing production, but also working with philanthropies to try to buy down the interest rate so we can better serve folks that can utilize our programs. Our programs focus primarily on low and moderate income individuals. We have both a guaranteed but also a direct lending component of our 502 programs. And so knowing that, again, we get our funding from Congress, oftentimes it's at a level that we wish it was a little more. And so we can, because the need is there. We have a backlog of people that actually qualify, that could utilize our program. But again, we often run out of funding. So we're looking for collaborators. We're looking for partners. We also have a self-help program where, again, people can contribute sweat equity. But again, it really takes really recognizing different funding models. We invested in Michigan. There's a housing cooperative where there's joint ownership from people in a housing structure. We were actually able to use community facilities funds to actually fund that facility. And that's something that Rihanna actually has really been pushing with the help of people from Congress to be able to better utilize a pot of funding that we have that's primarily designed for essential community facilities, but understanding that, you know, you could have a mixed use facility, whether it's a business with housing upstairs or a community facility like a child care facility or some other facility that also has a housing component as well. So we're truly trying to be as creative and innovative and looking at ways that we can better house individuals, whether it's workforce housing, and again, didn't even talk about, you know, the workforce housing that we do have, but workforce housing primarily focusing on agriculture. But looking at our mainstay programs, we're looking at partnerships. Again, where we can bring in structures and even housing renovation. We have a housing renovation 504 program really designed to improve housing because in many states, there are structures that are there, but again, may not be as inhabitable. And so if we can improve and upgrade these structures as well, because again, it's really about increasing the housing stock and the availability of people to access these houses as well. So creativity, collaboration, and flexibility, I think that's what we're trying to utilize in rural development.
I imagine we have a lot of stakeholders, maybe everybody in this room is a stakeholder. How can they continue to work with rural development to expand the impact of rural housing programs?
Oh, well, certainly you have a great staff here. I mean, so that is actually first and foremost. I mean, they're there in the communities, they're on the ground. So please connect with Rihanna and her team. That is really the best way to really utilize our programs. But we really try to educate and promote. And again, work with collaborators, work with Habitat, work with nonprofit organizations to really get the message out about our programs. I mean, I read that every 2 years, about a third of the mayors in rural America actually, they turn over. So it requires rural development to constantly connect with elected officials, municipalities, nonprofit organizations, to let them know that we're here, but to let them know about the resources that we could possibly bring, certainly related to housing and community facilities, infrastructure. We do so much. I mean, we really get excited about the work that we do, and we take it seriously. And so the team here is the best way to sort of connect, certainly around our housing programs.
Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about something, Hannah, you mentioned briefly, and I know, Dr. Gooden, you know a lot about, which is access to productive farmland. So we've seen some conversation around this in Maine, and know those conversations are happening at the national level as well about how we ensure that we have access to productive farmland in the future. There are several threats to it, obviously, which a lot of people here know well: low-density housing, sprawl, in some cases, siting of renewables. How is the state and how is the federal government ensuring that we have farmland that is safe from development?
Want to start with federal?
So that is a big issue. I speak to organizations, again, across the country. As soon as I start talking about renewable energy, the first thing people think about is actually solar panels, and then, especially if it's an audience of farmers and producers, then the conversation talks about siting and the loss of farmland. Well, here's the thing. What we do in rural development, we have programs to improve energy efficiency. It's more than just solar panels that we work with. We work with geothermal processes as well, biodigesters, ways that we can really improve the energy efficiency of a farmer, rancher, or business's operations. One thing that I do know about rural people is that they're very practical. And if we can show them a way that they can reduce the cost of their operations, then they're all in. I have a farm friend that actually 2 years ago, he took his family on a family vacation. This guy is a farmer, down the road from me, and he has all diesel engines. He needs high-powered stuff. When he went to rent a minivan to take his family on vacation, all they had was a hybrid minivan for him to use. He didn't want it, but his wife insisted, we're going to take this hybrid minivan. Well, he took this hybrid minivan, went on a 10-day vacation. When he came back, he was the biggest proponent of hybrid vehicles. I mean, literally. And I think that's what it takes. It takes for us to show farmers, ranchers, producers that solar panels, these renewable energies, it can really benefit to your bottom line or your community's bottom line. So there's no clear answer on how to prevent the pushback that we receive. But I think it's an educational process, working with communities, showing that we're not at USDA trying to assume prime farmland from individuals, that actually there are models where, again, siting solar panels in addition to livestock or row crops. And so there are options that are there. But I really think it's going to take it takes far more educational processes than we're currently using, and again, show how it can benefit those communities that have these solar panels and wind turbines as well.
Great, well, thank you. Probably some folks in this room are aware that the state has passed some policy along these lines. One of the things we want to do is encourage solar and other types of renewable energy where we want it, and brownfields, including PFAS lands, is an opportunity for Maine for where we could put solar that would have less impact. There's also a law that passed that is still in the process of the rules are being promulgated to protect prime farmland from types of renewable, especially solar development. That is still complex and in the works, but is likely to have some impact to help protect those especially important agricultural lands that people don't want to see developed. But I would say that is really just all about solar. It's not about sprawling development. It's not about other types of things. So there have been there's been some renewable energy people pointing out, well, sprawl and housing development is having a much bigger impact. When we did the last climate plan, we knew that at least 10,000 acres a year were being developed. Maine obviously does have a lot of land. We're 90% forested, so there is a fair amount of space, but especially around our communities where people live, how we manage that space thoughtfully and where we site renewables is going to be an increasingly important topic. I did talk about the goal the state has to preserve 30% of our lands as natural and working lands by 2030. One of the goals that especially Commissioner Amanda Beal has put out there is we are not doing enough at all on farmland. We've done better on recreational lands and on timberlands, but really doubling down on our investments in helping to protect farms where we have a lot of retiring farmers who aren't quite sure what to do with their land. That's a major priority for the coming years. So what does that take? It takes investment, it takes partnerships, it takes organizations like GrowSmart and Maine Farmland Trust to help do this work. But honestly, it takes communities deciding, what do you want your community to look like? Where do you want solar panels? Where are lands that we'd be happy to have them? Are we the right town for a larger wind project that has a very different land use pattern? And where do we not want it? Just saying no to everything is not possible. Absolutely. I would say it over and over again, especially on the issue of housing. And this really does come back to where communities and especially regional groups of communities need to plan for where we put things. And that's, I think, why a lot of you are here today.
I want to invite questions from the audience. If anyone has a question, if you could come up to the microphone. I will tell you two things. My favorite journalism professor said, a question has a question mark at the end of it. This is not just a statement that you want a response to. And the second is that I'm going to give everybody a minute. I will cut you off, so nicely, but I will do it. So yeah, anyone who has questions, please come forward.
Is it on?
It should be on.
Thank you both so much for sharing your time and expertise with us this morning. As a kid from one of Maine's most coastal and rural counties, I'm very proud and inspired to hear of your work across the state and the nation. When we talk about climate resilience, much of the focus is understandably on hard infrastructure like roads, seawalls, and burrowing our utilities. In my life, both as a planner professionally and a caregiver personally, I'm stuck on how we also strengthen the social infrastructure, support networks, mental health resources, community engagement, and outreach for those most affected and often least involved in problem solving, particularly our elderly and youth in rural and coastal areas. I'm curious how you interact with the social side of infrastructure resilience in your roles, and are you seeing the more emotional side of these complex times being talked about as often as it should be?
No, and I really do appreciate that question. And certainly in rural America, we know that mental health services are vitally important. It goes under discussed. I was talking with the state director of North Carolina after Hurricane Helene, and he indicated that he had several staff members that had community members that were actually impacted by the flood, but actually individuals that were washed away, that they don't know where they are. And then these individuals are coming to work at USDA, but they have community members that, again, are missing. They're still missing. And the mental impact that has on individuals, knowing that we have to not only, as you indicated, the physical structure. Yeah, we can replace some of the physical, water systems, the road systems, we can work there. But we have to be mindful and really intentional about looking at the mental health and the mental well-being of people that are not only delivering the services, but people in the communities as well. So that's vitally important. Many of the healthcare investments that we make in rural development, we really focus on mental health as well, knowing that, again, the suicide rates among veterans, the suicide rate among even farmers, people in rural America. I mean, my family was impacted by suicide as well. I mean, so again, these are things that we need to talk about, and I really appreciate you addressing that. But we try to put that at the forefront when we're talking about our investments in rural America. Nothing happens in rural America without, one, a place to stay, housing. You have to have that. You also have to have adequate health care. And a part of adequate health care is certainly focused on mental health services as well. So those things go together. You have to have a good educational system, but you also have to have other things, broadband, things like that. But health care and housing, those are at the top of the list of the things that we're focusing on at USDA Rural Development. So I appreciate your question and focus on that this morning.
Dr. Gooden said it very well, but I will just say I appreciate the question. I didn't show the slide, but one of the new strategies of the climate plan is around mental health and resilience. We recognize it as important. Lots of young people brought it to us, but after the most recent storms, we know that, people working in emergency management in communities, in natural resource industries, a lot of people are facing real disruption in their lives. And I did learn this past year that Maine got federal CDC funding after the Lewiston shootings, and we also got federal CDC funding after the storms. So there is a federal recognition that special mental health support is needed, but we know with issues like climate, the sort of long-term challenge and change is going to require something a lot more complex.
Thanks for that. I really appreciate being here today with all of the GrowSmart people and with you all today. I think if we took this show on the road, it's one of the things that gives everyone such an uplift and a focus on the future. I'm Tracy Gear. I co-chair in the Maine Legislature the Joint Select Committee on Housing. And I think housing is so vital to talk about today. Speaking about what Dr. Gooden said about kind of having the silos of federal funding, and kind of a revelation for me is that also then impacts how we organize at the state level to do things. For anyone who's been on committee and has heard my pickle speech, we're in this pickle because housing didn't have that. It didn't have a focus of clear funding that comes from the federal government and then kind of helps organize our efforts at the state level. That said, I would, given the fact that we have both federal and state representation here, in thinking how as we go forward, how do we connect the dots on those so that we make sure that when we're doing resilience projects, we're also thinking about how that impacts where housing is located and how we build and preserve more affordable and also attainable housing, including starter homes for ownership, and not make these things one-offs and individual things. What is the state thinking about that, and what can the federal government do to help make that happen more holistically so that we can achieve all those wonderful goals that we talked about early on? Thanks.
Sure. Well, I know at USDA, we have monthly meetings with HUD, and not only HUD, but Health and Human Services as well. At USDA, we have a new initiative. It's called the Rural Partners Network, where we're actually, it's an all-of-government approach. Really, to answer your question, I don't think it's one agency that's able to solve or even adequately address the housing issues that we see across the country. We have to work in unison with HUD, whether it's really better utilizing the CDBG program or our programs that we have to help communities understand the need for resiliency planning. Because here's what I've seen time and time again. Again, I've been in community and economic development for about 30 years, actually. And what I see time and time again, it's far easier to have a discussion about cleaning up after a disaster has taken place, or after an impact has happened. It's far easier to do that than it is to convince individuals we need to plan adequately on the front end. And so that's why my hat's off to you as planners, as community advocates, because you see the need for resiliency planning, whether it's in housing, whether it's in healthcare or infrastructure. Convincing people, because right now we're putting together packages to try to even get funding for Hurricane Beryl, Hurricane Helene, Hurricane Milton. That, I mean, we're trying to get the money, but we're having conversations about let's plan ahead. Let's help communities plan ahead. So it is a challenge. I wish I had a quick answer for you on that, other than the collaboration that we're having. Certainly at the federal level with HUD, with Health and Human Services, but with FEMA as we recover from these disasters as well. That's the only way. If we can have a chance at addressing some of these housing issues.
And I would just add from a state perspective, Representative Geer is a tremendous leader on these topics, and I think you and the state understand, and we're trying to figure out more ways to implement just the intersecting nature of all these issues. And I would just say, none of this is happening in silos, which is why we are trying to ensure that the climate plan is investing in transportation and housing strategies that help produce more housing for Maine people, because we know all of these things are intersecting. They require money, political will, local leaders to help make them happen, and I think we've got Samantha in the room. I mean, I think we do hope, as you know, that providing more support at the local and regional level will help strengthen that as we move forward. Again, doing all of the things. There's no simple solution, as you know very, very well.
And I know it is 11, and we have a full morning of programming. I think, can we take one more question, Nancy, since we started a few minutes late, and then we'll move on. Okay, we'll take one more question, and then I know Hannah and Dr. Gooden will be around as well for you to ask the rest of what you're curious about.
Hello, my name is Sean Lewin, and I'm from Boothbay Harbor. And I've been saying for 25 years that Maine has a housing glut of about 50,000 bedrooms that are empty. The problem is they're all owned by people like me and older, and we've been convinced since we were kids that we're supposed to be independent till the day we die, and we aren't going to be. But in the meantime, we have many young people and young families that if we could figure out how to convince these seniors that sharing a home will make them feel younger and not make them feel, like they've lost their independence, we'll really have an opportunity to make something wonderful happen. And the state has now gotten a program that is being handled by the Housing Authority and working with an international firm or a national firm called Nesterly to try to be a matchmaker for the people who need housing and the people who need someone sharing their housing. And what we need to do is figure out how to do a public relations effort to convince my wife and other people's wives that it's a good idea to bring a young person or a young family into our home and help them get some money so they can buy a house down the road. The last thing is I like to know about how to buy solar and how to buy heat pumps. And if I put that question in my Facebook or my email, I'll get 50 things, and I don't know if any of them are real. So I need to know where I can get guidance on those two things.
Well, if you're a farmer or producer or business owner in rural America, then we have programs that could help you with your renewable energy, whether it's solar or geothermal or. So again, Rihanna will be able to help you sort of work through that. But you're spot on related to whether it's communal living or different housing models. Actually, I know in the state of Virginia, rural development invested in several projects where it is elderly communal living, where actually individuals are living together, they're perfectly healthy, but again, it's a different model that folks are really utilizing. I think that's what we're going to need. We're going to need ideas. We're going to need for certainly the federal government to take risk in investing, trying to produce housing that serves, whether it's multifamily housing. But again, it's going to take ideas, creativity to really begin tackling the housing issues that we see not only here in Maine, but again, across the country, because that's number one issue that I hear when I travel. I'm leaving here, I'm going to Nebraska this afternoon. I'm sure we're going to get questions about housing and healthcare, and childcare. Big issues that we really need to put our best and brightest thinking around these issues, and have to be serious and make it we have to have the political will as well to address these issues, because these issues didn't crop up overnight. and it's going to take a lot of thinking to really address it. So I appreciate the idea, but it really is going to take innovation, creativity, and flexibility and collaboration to really tackle these big issues.
Sean, thanks for your question. I mean, I would just say, we got Kate sitting right here on the stage, the journalist, so you should get her to write a story about that new Maine housing program. And I would also I think that's a great idea, and to figure out how to make sure more Maine people know about it. I think everybody in this room knows about LD 2003 and the ability for people to cut up their house. If you don't want to live with a family, you could turn your house into 2 units. You can put an ADU in your backyard. We have a lot more opportunity to create housing in people's individual house lots than we ever had before. I'll just end with MaineWon'tWait.org is the website that the state launched to help businesses, individual homeowners, schools access the resources that are changing all the time, especially with a lot of new federal opportunities. That's a website where you can go to sort of learn how to walk through, how do I install a heat pump, weatherize my house, buy an electric car, find all these programs. So check it out, Efficiency Maine. You'll get a lot of links to Efficiency Maine. They're a great resource here. So Sean, you got to do it. I'm sad that you don't have a heat pump yet, but you're going to get it done.
We have 2. They're great. Well, thank you both so much. That was wonderful, and I'm sorry we didn't get to all the questions, but I look forward to the rest of the morning and afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Before you disappear, Dr. Gooden.
Oh, wow.
Deanna.
Did you bake this, Nancy?
Lucky for you, no.
Oh, no.
And Kate. So please join me again in thanking our keynotes. I'm going to give the lineup for the next for the next 2 hours, actually. So
all right.
Whichever way you all want to leave.
All right.
I hope that you all found these comments personally resonating. As I was listening to the conversation about multi-generational, my daughter Marina, who may have helped you with your pre-registered name tag, she and I bought a house together in Ellsworth a couple of years ago. We have been joined by her partner and his 9-year-old son. So we are now a 3-generation family with 3 cats and a dog on top. So at 62, I am now on school bus run, making sure that the 9-year-old gets on the bus and off the bus most afternoons. And I absolutely love it. I recommend multi-generational living as you can. With Hannah, who I know as Madam Speaker, and she gifted me the nickname Nancinator, which I still use on occasion. Wonderful perspectives there, and Mr. Undersecretary, his story of the cows reminds me, for my 17 years of farming, there's no bigger adrenaline rush than the words, "the cows are out." And thank you to Kate. The Maine Monitor is an incredible resource. We're happy that she was able to be here with us. Let me give you the lineup for the next couple of hours. This is in your program. We have a break, community spotlights, the lunch, and then come back here at 1 o'clock. There's an hour and 15 minutes after the break to connect with our community spotlights. Thank you for doing the slide, I forgot. This is one of my favorite parts of the entire day, where you get to see on the ground, and to Larissa Holland, one of our new board members, questions both social and physical infrastructure. The stories that we've heard today, the tools that we're hearing about, there will be, we had 11 lined up, 1 had to drop out, but we'll have 10 stories that you can visit with. The 2 that are on your map to be up on stage will not be on stage. Directly behind the lobby, there's a half flight of stairs up to a mezzanine, and that's where the other 2 will be. So you have time to visit, and we've paired them together so that you can have conversations with as many as you like to see what's going on. The descriptions are in your program as well. As an incentive, each of the spotlights has blue tickets. These are for a door prize. When you visit, a community spotlight, ask for one of the raffle tickets, write your name on it legibly, bring it to the reception, and we will have a drawing for 2 pairs of Downeaster tickets, thanks to our sponsor, the Northern New England Passenger Rail Association. Must be present to win, so we hope you will come to the reception for those. As you enter the reception, we will hand you green tickets for 1 free drink as well. The lunch is outlined in the program. We have a couple of stations for you to choose from. This doesn't mean you get one from each station. Please pick the one that you want and go from there. Please come back at 1 p.m. You are welcome to have lunch in the upper level outside, down the lower level outside on the lawn. I know there's a risk of inviting you to go outside that you won't come back. But we are going to start off at 1 o'clock with our Maine Smart Growth Award winners. There are 4. Nobody except them knows who they are yet. I am going to ask those of you who are here with an award winner, when you come back, please sit in the front row, so it is kind of a spoiler, but we are going to give you an opportunity to come up on stage to receive your plaque and be congratulated. So if those of you would be willing to come at 1 o'clock down front, that would be helpful. After the Smart Growth Awards, we're going to have a brief annual meeting. In the bylaws, I need to give you a report, and I have really exciting things to share with you at that time. And then our election of 2 board members, and then the slate of officers, and then the city experience tour. So we'll cover that when we get there, but there's still much more to go. So you've got a bit of a break. You've got community spotlights. Please visit as many as you can or want to. Lunch, and come back here at 1 o'clock and we'll get going again. Thank you to all of you, and again to our keynote speakers. Thank you.